out-of-state annual pass holders, we've stayed at a lot of different places for our Disney trips. So here's a review of our first day at Disney's Pop Century Resort. For most of our trips, if we're deciding to stay on Disney property, we usually go for one of the all-star resorts. They're cheap, there's usually plenty of rooms to book, and since we don't really use a lot of hotel amenities, since we choose to spend most of our time, energy, and money in the parks, it usually just makes sense to go budget and just stick with the all-stars. But this time we saw that it really wasn't very much more to go to, say, Pop Century, and we'd never been there before, so we thought, hey, why not give it a try? I know this resort has a major following in the Disney community, and I really wanted to see what the fuss was about. On this particular trip, we actually split our stay between the Pop Century and the Swan and Dolphin. So if you want to like, subscribe, and ring the little bell down below, you'll get a notification for my upcoming review of the Dolphin. One of the best parts about our room location, though, was that we were really close to the bridge that connects Pop Century to Art of Animation. That meant a couple of times that we could get off a bus earlier because it stopped at Art of Animation and it was then going to Pop Century, and rather than it driving all the way around, we were able to get off here and just make a little short walk straight to our resort from a different one. And there were a couple of times where instead of waiting and waiting and waiting and our bus just didn't seem to be coming, instead we hopped on the Art of Animation one, and again, it lets you off at their lobby and it's almost a straight shot through their main building and across the bridge, and we were at the back of Pop Century, which is kind of where our room was. So that's a really convenient thing to keep in mind. Also, major bonus, that bridge in the very near future is a stop on the Skyliner route. So when that opens, those resorts are going to be super well located, and if you have a room on the back of the resort on the lakeside section, you're going to be really close to the Skyliner, so assuming those are half as nice as Disney is hoping they're going to be, that'll be very, very convenient. The Pop Century Resort as a whole is themed solely around pop culture, and each section is devoted to a different decade. They have the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and each one has some little throwbacks to each of their time periods, just some visual cues. The main buildings, of course, are all very similar. It's just some facade differences, but then there are the end caps. For instance, at the end of our building, instead of a regular staircase like you would have on a non-Disney hotel, we had a very large bowling pin, and then our pool for our section was also bowling pin shaped. So just typical little magic of Disney, where everything is themed and everything is decorative and also attractive, even at these more budget and mid-ranged resorts. Since we're not very familiar with Pop Century, and there was one morning where we had a little bit of extra time to kill, we decided to walk around and see what the rest of the resort was like, not just the section where our room ended up being. It was a lot of fun. There were some really cute things to see, we got a couple cute little pictures, and got a little idea of the rest of the resort for possible future stays. The main building isn't really all that different from the all-star resorts. You have the main big area with all the customer service desks where you go to check in if you haven't already gotten your text or email notification about your room. And then off that section, there was the more entertainment area for once you're already checked in. There's a little arcade off to one side, and then there's the gift shop and the food court. And slightly different from the All-Star, the food court and the gift shop were actually kind of connected. There was just a little desk and low wall kind of area that separated them. Other than that, you could freely walk between the two. So that made it kind of nice when you would hop off a bus and say it's raining. You could dart in through there and get immediately from the buses into the gift shop and then the food court, so you can sort of have somewhere nice and dry to relax. Or you could go ahead and just cut through the lobby as usual, but it was just nice to sort of be able to disperse the whole bus crowd a little bit quicker, I felt. And if you were trying to go straight to your room, you could, or if you were going to be like us and want to stay out of the downpour a little bit longer, you could quickly and easily get into peruse and sort of window shop the gift shop, and then go find a nice little treat in the food court. We didn't really eat a lot at the resort on this trip, but it seemed a pretty standard Disney food court fare. You know, slices or whole pizzas, some little quick service counters by different themes. The one section we did make sure to check out was the ice cream and bakery and dessert area because it's Disney and you're on vacation, might as well treat yourself. One thing that I know a lot of people were a little divided on in the Disney community was the recent renovations to the rooms at Pop Century. Some people think that they're not Disney enough and that they're kind of sterile and clean. Personally, we didn't have a problem with them. Maybe it's because we're adults and we didn't have any little kiddos with us, but there was a really big Mickey wall art and there were several other smaller Mickeys throughout the room. Just because there wasn't a big wallpaper border or something else, I don't know what other people are really wanting to have the room be more Disney, more Mickey. It still felt very Disney to us. We didn't have a problem with that. We were actually really happy with the rooms. There was so much space, and yes, I know we didn't have a whole family in this room, there were just the two of us, but we're used to just the two of us in the little all-star rooms, which are really about the same size, but the layout at Pop Century now is just so nice. Everything's very efficient and you've got lots and lots of room. Previously in the all-star rooms, I always had suitcases taking up space. I had to figure out where to put everything and we were stumbling over things. Not an issue in these Pop Century rooms. For one thing, instead of the two queen-size beds, there is one bed that folds up into a Murphy bed, and that leaves the table that you normally have tucked over by the window. That's now just there where one of the other beds used to be. So for us, in our case, since we're only using the one bed, that freed up automatically a ton of space. And since you now don't have to have room for bed and table, you just have to have the table. The table was actually a good bit bigger. That little round table that I'm used to at the All-Star is kind of small. You can't really put a lot of stuff on it. So you end up moving things around and back and forth a lot. This was a pretty decent sized table and it was just out all the time. But since we didn't have a bed there also, it made a lot more usable space and freed up some floor space. So I had the suitcases over by the door. But if we had wanted even more floor space, there is also room under the permanent bed so you can stash your suitcases under there once they're empty. I thought that was amazing, and if we'd had a whole family or another couple or just any sort of group in there, I definitely would have taken advantage of that and put empty suitcases under the bed. But since we had so much more room already than I was used to, I didn't bother. I just left the empty suitcases over by the window. Of course, curiosity got the better of us, and we had to mess around with that Murphy bed a little bit. If you're a busy parent and you're juggling those kids, just how easy is it to transform from bed to table and back again? So we decided to try. I barely had my camera sat down on a table and recording, and my husband already had the bed folded down and just as easily, all on his own, was able to fold it back up. He insisted it was super easy and that pretty much anyone should be able to do it all on their own, no problem. Again, maybe it's because we're both adults and we didn't have any kiddos, but we didn't really feel there was any Disney magic lacking from the room. I did think there were a couple of questionable design choices. I didn't really care for the print on the curtains, and there was this odd disc light that kind of looked like it should just be a ceiling fixture, but it was very large and just sort of stuck randomly on the wall. I didn't really get that. It was kind of weird. It didn't even really seem to give off that much light for the size of it, and I thought it was placed kind of weirdly. But I mean, it did give off light. It wasn't in the way or anything. It just seemed a little odd to me. I seem to have this ongoing battle with hotel rooms, whether it's at Disney or otherwise, to find enough outlets. They always seem to be tucked behind some piece of furniture or under a curtain, and they're always hidden away, and odd and hard to get to, so I have a hard time getting in our phones and all our electronics to be charging. And then since they're always tucked away, I'm always kind of afraid that I'm going to leave one behind sometime, but that was not a case in the new Pop Century room. Instead of the bedside tables being freestanding pieces of furniture that you have to pull out and then reach down by the alarm clock plug, the end tables are actually up and attached to the wall, and then clearly visible above them were 2 electrical outlets and 2 USB ports, and at both bedside tables. So we could both have our phones plugged in on our side of the bed, and I still had 2 plugs on my side of the bed to plug in the battery chargers for my camera. It was amazing, not having to scrounge around the room to find somewhere to plug in different things. All kinds of ports and outlets, clearly visible as if actually meant to be used by the person using the room, whereas typically in a hotel room, I feel like I'm almost not supposed to plug something in because they've always got all the plugs hidden. It was really nice being able to have everything plugged in 1 or 2 locations instead of being scattered all around the room, and I wasn't taking up something like, say, the vanity outlets with a phone charger so that I could actually plug in a curling iron or the blow dryer or whatever right there. Very nice. Another simple but convenient section was sort of the drink station that was over by the window. There was the typical ice bucket, a couple of cups, a single serve coffee maker, and a mini fridge. But what was really nice about this mini fridge was that the front door was glass. I can't tell you how many times in the past I have forgotten some leftovers or a drink or something that I actually did want, but I forgot it in the fridge because the fridge is not only usually an opaque door, but then it's usually tucked away into a cabinet somewhere. Having this one just out and visible, and you could see right through the door to be like, oh, that can of pop is in there still, or whatever. I thought that was a nice little touch, really simple, but actually very useful. I also really liked how they fully separated the vanity section from both the shower room and the actual sleeping area. There's the typical door into the shower room, which has been pretty standard, but I know in the past at all-star rooms, that little vanity section could only be blocked off by a simple little curtain, which if you're using that area as a changing room, say you've got a bunch of different groups in there, you're not just talking like, say, a husband and wife or whatever, if you're wanting that little bit of privacy, that curtain was actually fairly useless, but having this nice big barn door, I could see that being very useful. So if you're looking at having different groups staying in one room, that was a nice little touch. You could have somebody changing in that section and somebody changing in the sleeping room, all while somebody else is in the shower or whatever. I thought that was a really nice touch, and since it was just a sliding barn door, it didn't take up a lot of room in the rest of the area. So you weren't blocking a lot of space, you were again keeping it all nice and open and usable space. Another similar bonus was the door to block off the toilet and shower area was a pocket door. Again, not taking up any space, not making anything blocked. It just tucked away, but then easily slid out when you needed it. And on the vanity side of that pocket door was actually a full-length mirror, which surprisingly you don't always get in a hotel room. So I really thought that was another nice touch. The only thing I wasn't very fond of with the room was actually the shower head, and that's very much a personal preference. It was one of the ones that had the typical sort of arm shower head and also a waterfall section, and I kinda hate those waterfall shower heads. With my purple hair, I try to avoid getting my hair wet as much as possible. If I'm not actually going to be washing my hair, I don't want to get it wet. And that's almost impossible with those waterfall shower heads. And there were different settings for the shower, but only one of them did not use the waterfall at all. The rest were different combinations, and that one didn't have the best water pressure, and I love good water pressure. So I wasn't a big fan of the shower, but of course for a temporary stay, It wasn't a deal breaker, it was just kind of annoying, and again, just a personal preference. My husband, of course, did not care, so that's totally up to you, but kind of a heads up if you also do not like waterfall showers. The vanity area is awesome. There are so many little cubbies and shelves and sections that everybody can have their space to put all of their toiletries. My hair things had a space, our toothbrushes had a space. There was plenty of room to tuck away all of everybody's things without the entire sink top being so loaded up with stuff that you're constantly knocking things over. I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. We didn't even use half the space that was available to us. So if you have a big family, you should have no problem getting all of everybody's things tucked away over by the vanity. All in all, we were super impressed with the Pop Century Resort, and I totally see why everyone's always raving about it. Between the accessibility, the really awesome rooms with all that great usable space, and the really useful practical little details, I'm pretty sure we have a new go-to resort. What do you think? Have you stayed at the All-Stars or the Pop Century? Do you have a comparison? If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll like and subscribe down below. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.